Hello, everyone, and welcome to Garden Gossip, the Home and Garden Show, with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
On today's show, we are going to Exeter, California, the gateway to Sequoia National Park, and we're going to be chatting with Sandy Blankenship, who's the executive director of the Exeter Chamber of Commerce. She's going to be talking about the town's upcoming annual garden party, garden walks. There's all kinds of culinary events, antique sales. I mean, it's cool.
How much fun is that?
And we love Exeter. It's such a beautiful, historic downtown with murals and flowers. And it's like you need to go there if you go to Sequoia National Park. You must.
Oh, yeah. It's so pretty.
Yeah, whether or not you go to the park, you need to go there. And they have cool community gardens and school gardens. It's just an awesome place. So excited to chat with Sandy again.
It.
We do. We can't wait. We're going to go back. And then David-Mizejewski is coming on the show again. He is the National Wildlife Federation's naturalist and author of the award-winning how-to book, Attracting Birds, Butterflies, and Other Backyard Wildlife. No, not your men, Nancy. But he's joining.
I got me some backyard wildlife.
I know. We all want some cool critters in our backyard. Anyway, he's joining us to talk about the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program and also to share some fun gardening tips and activities for kids and families. The whole thing is to get your kids in the garden. And how are you going to do it? There's all kinds of projects and oh, my gosh, everything from making fairy gardens to how to make your own recycled hummingbird feeder. There's all these cool projects out there.
I love that.
I love the National Wildlife Federation's Backyard Wildlife Program or Gardening for Wildlife program.
You spent a lot of time in the garden.
Ranger
As
Rick
a child,
part of it.
You had a whole choir of canna lilies singing.
And bugs and bullfrogs.
And you were like the conductor of the orchestra with a pencil, and you made those flowers sing.
Yes, and played with bullfrogs.
Yes, that's true, too.
Yes, the bullfrogs are key. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is March 13th, 2018, and today I declare it National Bullfrog Day. I have no idea why, but why not? You're listening to Big Blend Radio's Garden Gossip Home and Garden Show. We're streaming live from a sunny Tucson, Arizona, and we're your hosts, Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith, the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of two digital interactive magazines. We have Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. That's our variety lifestyle magazine. Check it out, blendradioandtv.com. And it has a lot of gardening in there right now, so check it out. The spring issue has, like, how to go and do organic gardening, gardening for wildlife, all kinds of good stuff. And we also publish Parks and Travel magazine, which that's what it's about, parks and travel. You can check that out at nationalparktraveling.com. But I think it's time to go to Exeter because we get to talk to Sandy, and that's always fun. And Sandy always gives us the Walter Report. And to hear that Walter Report talk about wildlife in your backyard, stay tuned. Located in Central California's beautiful Sequoia country, Exeter is a charming historic agricultural community and gateway community destination for Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, as well as Giant Sequoia National Monument and Sequoia National Forest. The historic downtown is like an awesome place to go hang out, take a stroll, look at all the murals. The murals is incredible. That whole program, the whole town is decorated. It's beautiful. There's all kinds of restaurants, antique shops, boutiques. The restaurants are cool. There's good restaurants. There's good food.
I think we had our way through Exeter once.
I know. And there's a lot of flower power. So we love Exeter. Go to exeterchamber.com to learn more about the region. We also cover it in nationalparktraveling.com. But we're excited to have Sandy Blankenship back on the show. She is the executive director of the Exeter Chamber of Commerce, and she's going to give us a scoop on some upcoming spring events that if you love gardens, you love food, you like antiques, you like to shop, you're going to want to go there. And you should, because we've been there a few times, and it rocks. Sandy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you ladies?
We're doing good. We're excited to chat with you. And before you came on the show, we mentioned Walter, because we're going to be talking about gardening for wildlife. And we thought, like, Walter would be like the dude, the wildlife dude in the backyard. It's like, you want to give everybody an explanation of what we kind of promised? If you want wildlife, call Walter.
Yes. Walter is often found in our backyard garden here at the Chamber of Commerce. He's our resident cat, and he is our goodwill ambassador to people coming and going from the national parks and the forest. And people come here sometimes just to see him. And he is a perfect ambassador for us. He loves people, and he is quite the character, as you ladies well know.
He's a stud.
He's very handsome.
He's a studly cat. He is.
Yes.
He's the man. He's the man about town. And he even has his little painting inside one of the murals in the downtown district. Because the murals, this is the thing. A lot of communities have murals. And you guys took initiative with your town saying, hey, we want people to come in and experience our town and see our history, learn about our agriculture, because you guys are like, the breadbasket of America. And, citrus and grapes and all kinds of wonderful things are grown out there. But you hide things in your murals. You don't just have a mural. You have to hide something. And Walter is one of the hidden gems.
He is one of the hidden objects in one of our murals. Yeah, we started that, I think around the second or third mural. It kind of started by accident when one of the artists wanted to include something in there. In the mural, it was a quarter because it was the packing ladies and the foreman used to flip a coin, and if I don't know which way it was, heads or tails, whichever the ladies called, if they won, then he bought coffee for everyone, and if they lost, then he would they would have to buy coffee for him. So it kind of got started if you had to find the quarter in his hand. And so then we got to thinking, well, gee, that would make it kind of fun if we had hidden objects in the murals. It just gives them another layer of interest. And children are extremely good at finding them because some objects are easy to see and some of them are a little more difficult to find. And it takes a little while, but it has made it quite fun for visitors. In fact, there was one mural that they couldn't find one of the hidden objects, and they must have gone all over town trying to find somebody to show them where the hidden object was. They were getting so frustrated, so they finally did find it. But it makes it a lot more fun than just looking at a painting.
And it's interesting too because it's hide and seek in Exeter. That's what I want to say because the last time we had our locals insider conversation with you, it was really interesting. You had a couple other guests, locals, and everyone go to nationalparktraveling.com. Just type in locals insider Exeter. You had Ben Garcia over from Exeter Hobbies, Teresa Boyce, the mayor. And it was really interesting because we found out that now you have hidden painted rocks around town, too. So not only you're looking for hidden objects in the murals, you're walking in the downtown after dinner or lunch or breakfast. I'm just saying because you have a lot of good food. Yes. You're looking for hidden painted rocks, too. So there's a lot of,
and they're beautifully painted. Some of them are just quite artistic. In fact, we had a mural tour of a Girl Scout troop, and some ladies within the Exeter Rocks group went out and hid rocks just for them so that they would have some to find along the way. Because you just never know where they're going to pop up, and people are really getting into it. They're enjoying it.
I like that.
It's kind of like geocaching.
Yeah, but this is, I don't know, there's an artistic thing to it that I like.
Community and artistic flair to it.
Yeah, and you don't have to register, or maybe, I don't know, but you can go on Facebook.
No, anybody can paint a rock. Yeah, anyone can do it. And our local library has a group that meets there once a week, and you can go in and, as a group, paint rocks. And, it's just another opportunity to socialize.
I want to do that. Next time we go there, I want to paint a rock.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's do it.
You can do that.
Cool.
Okay, cool. With Walter.
Yes.
Could you imagine? That's dangerous.
I'm going to paint Walter on a rock.
Oh, that would be cool. Has anybody done that yet?
No, we have a rock here that has a likeness of Walter on it, but it was painted before this phenomenon got started, and we use it as like paperweights when we are out and about. If we're at a outdoor venue, we need to put weights on things so the wind doesn't blow them away. And so we have one, so we have to keep those hidden in the office, or people might think they're part of the Exeter Rocks, and they may walk away.
the thing, your downtown is so pretty, and I think this is so interesting because you're an agricultural community, and spring is, I remember being there in spring, and every time we come on the show around this time, I'm like, can you smell the citrus? Can you smell the oranges? I know Dana Dirks from Sequoia National Park, when she was working there, now she's moved out to Washington, D.C., she's always, I miss the oranges, the blossoms. I mean, is it coming? Are you around that time frame yet?
Probably another month or maybe less than a month away. Probably first part of April or the end of March we'll be able to start smelling them, but nothing yet.
Oh man, it is so amazing. I mean, in spring, you have all the agriculture going on and everything's in bloom, nut trees, flowers with the the orange blossoms, but your downtown has flowers too. It seems to be a lot of pride in community. If we want our community to be inviting and someplace that we want to hang out, it seems like flower power is a thing.
Well, of course, flowers always make things look prettier. Our foliage, or and adding in that pop of color with a few different flowering plants, it just makes things look a whole lot nicer and more pleasant. Yes, happy. Yeah.
Happy. And you have community gardens too. I remember also you taking us to, I think, was it Rocky Hill, the school at Rocky Hill, where they were doing school gardens, and that was really interesting. I mean, they had the whole cycle of like composting and everything going on there. So kids were learning a lot, like trees, like fruit trees, and not just here's like a little bed of plants. They went all in with that.
Yeah, it's a lot of education. I mean, because even children, even though we're in an agricultural area, they don't really know how things grow. I mean, they see the trees, but they don't know what it takes to keep those trees alive and make them produce. So this gives them that opportunity to learn where their food comes from. And I know the Boys and Girls Club has a garden, and they were on our garden tour one year, and we went over. The students were giving us tours of their student garden, and it was just so cute because the young man that was taking me goes, "Well, do you like tomatoes?" And I'm like, "Well, yes." "Well, then you're in luck because we have tomatoes." It was just the cutest thing ever. They were so excited about the vegetables they were growing, and they actually will eat them because they make them the more unusual types of, they get the carrots in the different colors, and there's different varieties. It makes them a little more interesting to the students, and when they grow it themselves, they want to eat it. Versus mom putting it on their plate.
Yeah, because it's like they did it, and it's like a miracle when you think how seeds grow and how that all happens. And they put the effort into it. It is. I mean, it is a miracle, It's
amazing, yeah.
Well, it's a miracle when we grow anything.
Hey.
Well, it's a miracle when I grow something, too. Somebody has to appreciate all the gardeners and the growers around here, and I'm one of those.
I say bless the birds because they help with the seed distribution very nicely. So I say bless them because, they do a lot of work, and then thank you for rain. Have you had rain like some of the California areas I've seen?
Last week we did, and it was supposed to rain today. We got cloudy, but we never had any rain, but they had rain a little bit north of us.
Oh, good. Well, as much as you can get, just like, come on, rain gods, we want you. We're going outside and doing dances. And this is the thing, I want to get into this. You've got the 15th annual Full Bloom Garden Walk happening on Nancy's birthday. I know that you're doing this on purpose, everyone. Nancy's birthday is May 12th. Nancy was born on Mother's Day. And
every 7 years.
So that means I am totally locked in for that weekend, Saturday and Sunday. This is a deal.
What a
so this is exciting. So you've got the Full Bloom Garden Walk. So this is like the 15th annual one. This is pretty. I mean, when it keeps going on like that, it's awesome. But the Master Gardeners of Exeter are part of this, right?
They are. It's actually the Kings Tulare Master Gardeners, which is our counties, the Kings County and Tulare County. And they joined us a few years back and wanting to do a home gardening festival type of thing where they have different booths with different types of things that people can grow or things that people might want to know about, about their gardens or about succulents or about flowering plants or vegetables. And so you can go around and you can talk to the different master gardeners. This is part of their public service. They do have to do so much public service hours in a year, and so this is something that they have chosen to partner with us, which is good because it allows more people to come to the event, and I think some people come just to talk to them. And that's good. And they're you can ask them anything, but they have certain things set up for you to look at and to learn about. But you can talk to them about anything if you're having a problem with a certain area, or you don't know what to plant, or if you don't know why something's not growing in a particular location, they can help you, or they can find someone in the group that can help you.
That's so cool.
And I think that's really cool. That's what's so interesting how, we go into the flowers and what you're doing in your home. Anytime you've got agriculture going here. So, like, you've got pollination happening. Flower pollination. But to be able to go and speak with the experts, I think it keeps people gardening. And that's the point I was making about when you go downtown Exeter. It's so pretty. And when you drive in, there's orange trees and, and then you hit the downtown and you're in Exeter by the water tower. It's like, hello, we're here, welcome. And then, there's this beautiful atmosphere. And I think the murals and the garden areas that are everywhere in the downtown, just there's color and you're automatically like, oh, I feel good here. And you have that I don't know if it's a specific garden, but I've photographed it where there's a Vietnam memorial for the veterans, the Vietnam veterans, and memorial for those who have passed and are veterans. You have those, and there's some little gardens around there, and an old tree with these roots that are incredible. This photo I took of that, I'm like, look at these tree roots. So I don't know what tree it is. But that little area, those spaces, those green spaces that you've done in your downtown are amazing.
Yeah, we have several your little triangle-shaped parks. That one that you're speaking of is Joyner Park, named after a historic family here in town. And it does have the Vietnam Memorial there that the 1960s class all the classes got together for the 60s and made that happen, because that was their class was the ones that went and served for the most part over in Vietnam.
Wow.
So they wanted to honor the students that they lost.
Wow. And it wasn't better way than a green space, where you can calm down and really center, your emotions on that, and then be in touch with something,
Right.
The whole thing, when you walk
people.
downtown Exeter, it's so clean and pretty that everything just says we care.
Yeah. You're a sample model of a good downtown. You are like, when Nancy and I talk to people about tourism and destinations, we're like, Exeter's got it.
One of the top.
Yeah, you are the epitome of a community understanding that balance of community and visitors coming in, and beautification that happens for the community. There's a patriotism. There's a little bit of everything, but it's about community first, and then welcoming people in. And I think you guys have something very, very special with that.
Yeah.
And it's something that other communities can learn from. I'm just saying.
Well, I think you're right, and it takes everyone. It takes our city people that work in some of the city planters, and it takes the business owners. It takes the community members so that they don't, litter and leave things laying around, and to make things look unkept. But the city guys, once a week they come through and they empty the city trash cans, but they wipe them all down after they empty them to keep them looking fresh. And it just, as I said, it's the little things like that people don't notice, but you would notice if it was dirty. But you don't necessarily notice that it's clean.
No, that's true. That's
a
huge.
Really good point.
That's huge. I
it's
think
just the little touches.
Those little details that make life good. You know, it's like making sure the coffee pot is on so that when you wake up in the morning, you have coffee and you don't have to do it when you're crabby. It's the same thing. You all know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, we do.
It's like, where's that button?
It's like when you walk out with your eyes closed in the morning, you should be able to reach for the coffee cup and get it without opening your eyes. That's what has to happen. Okay, so now, again, the 15th annual Full Bloom Garden Walk is Saturday, May 12th, 9 a.m. till 2 p.m., and there's going to be a tea at the Victorian Garden. Okay, so the By the Water Tower Antiques. Nancy and I obviously need to go hang out there. We have not done that yet. And so they have a Victorian garden. That's cool.
They do. They have a very it's an old home that they have been using as an antique store for many, many years. Beautiful old craftsman style home. And they have garden areas around, and it's more in the Victorian style. Their gardening, and then they just go all out. They put up canopies, and you'll have tulle. They put chandeliers in the centers of each canopy, and they just bake and bake and bake to make sure everyone has luscious little desserts and little tea sandwiches and lots of different types. They have iced tea for the most part, but they'll have several varieties as well as a fruited lemonade of some sort. Last year I think it was blueberry lemonade. Anyway, it's just fabulous. They have aviary with birds in it, in one corner, and it's very, very comfortable. And they do this all at their own expense. They just love the community so much that they want to do this as part of our garden tour. And anyone can stop by, of course. You don't have to be part of the garden tour, but it is an added bonus for those within the that are attending the tour. Yeah.
Get your tickets. And so everyone can get tickets for this through the chamber, right? If they go to exeter-chamber.com and come see you. Okay, so everyone, it's on Nancy's birthday, May 12th. I'm just saying that over and over because she's sitting here,
Yeah.
I gotta do my daughterly duties. The other thing.
You remember it now, but will you remember it on May 12th?
As soon as I saw the date, I was like, I got to get my stuff on here. I know. And I have someone who makes sure I remember. It's called you. So the other part, we've talked a lot about your murals and the mural fundraiser. This is something that happens every year. You have the garden party, and everybody loves a good garden party, and this is May 6th. So it's before your birthday. It's a Sunday before. And so this is something that happens every year as well. It's pretty much been going for a while, and this helps artists come out and paint murals.
Yes. What we do is we have a live auction and silent auction and dinner, and it's out in our what we call Mixter Park. It's the center of town on Pine and E. We close off the street. We set up tables in the street for dinner, and then the park is filled with all of our auction items, and of course the bar and hors d'oeuvres are there. It's a very nice evening, and by coming and buying the things in the auction and supporting this event by being a table sponsor or just coming in general, buying a ticket and attending, it helps us continue the mural project because it does take money. Not only to paint new murals, but we also need to maintain the ones that we have, and we have to coat them with sealant so that the elements don't fade them or damage them in any way. And this year in particular, we're celebrating we have a new mural. It's not a very big mural, but it's really, really beautiful. It's called Anna's Flowers, and it's featuring a hummingbird that's called Anna's Hummingbird.
Yeah.
And I looked up the history on that, but I can't recite it right at the moment. But it was some princess, and her name was Anna, and she saw this hummingbird, and they named it after her. I can't remember which country she was from, but they are native to our area, and so it's a beautiful floral with it has lupin and yellow columbine, and they, just various different flowers and kind of a foothills type of scenery. It's really, really nice.
They are named after Anna Massena, the Duchess of Rivoli.
Rivoli
or Rivoli. Yeah, it's really interesting because she was French, and it's interesting because these hummingbirds were bred only in northern Baja California and southern California, and so now they've all moved out and around, and so they are like naturalized hummingbirds of this area. We have them here. I mean, we see them every single day, and they're so beautiful. And and it's all there's going to be like some scandal with why she got all that, but well, there's always, it's not. I know it's garden gossip. Come on now.
In the very beginning, hummingbirds, as far as we know now, came from Europe, but there are no hummingbirds in Europe now. They died out, and they're all over here. But the earliest fossils doesn't mean they won't find another one that says they came from here. But right now, the earliest fossil of the hummingbird is in Europe. Yes. So, and they don't have hummingbirds. We do, but the myth of the hummingbird is that the hummingbird is the one who brought fire to mankind. He went down where there was fire and picked up a coal under his chin, brought it back so that we could have fire, and that's why they have that iridescent glow under their chins. How about that?
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that cool?
I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hummingbirds are like these. They're also the sign of infinity because their wings, when they flutter their wings, and I'm not talking about when they poop because they do like to poop in my wine outside.
Well, don't leave it where they rest.
It's really rude. Well, we have wine covers now, but even still, stop it. But their little wings go in a circle of eight, a shape of eight. Yeah, which is infinity. So they're known for they're little feisty little devils. They are. And they're so beautiful, and we all like, oh, aren't they so lovely? And then you watch them fight,
you're like,
and you're like, dudes. But anyway, that's how interesting. So this is your new mural, because I remember at one point you were thinking not murals this time, but murals are sticking around with Exeter.
Oh yeah, I think they always will stick around. We'll probably go through another phase of possibly retiring some and repainting the walls, just for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they get too faded, and it's also to keep it fresh. We want people to not say, "Oh, I've seen that, been there, done that. I don't need to go back." So you want to keep it going. But we are also looking at other types of art for this area. Yeah, we just haven't settled on exactly what we want to do yet.
So now, when does this mural? When will it be ready for the public to see? Do you think?
Oh, it's done now.
Oh, it's done. Wow.
Yeah. It just recently was finished. I think end of last month.
Well, get in the car, everybody. Let's go.
That's right. It's ready.
Let's go to Exeter. Yeah, that's awesome. Way cool. Can you send us a photo? Or are you going to do? I want to see.
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I'll send you a photo.
Wow. Cool. I'm like, I feel left out. I want to see the mural. We need to get our butts out there. So this is super cool. So this is where the money goes for the mural fundraiser, the garden party. Come on, everyone. That's cool. May 6th. Now, okay. So the other thing, I want to bring up before we talk about food is antiques seem to be a growing thing in Exeter. I know that in your festival, your fall festival last year, you talked about adding on an antiques fair through the festival that one day. But it seems that the antique side of things, it's growing, that you have a peddler's market, you have something, April 14th is another event. I mean, who doesn't want to go antiquing and keep those things instead of throwing things out? We got to recycle, man. And it's cool. You can make things your own. So this is it seems like something's happening on that.
Yes, it's Peddler's Market. This particular business has held one twice a year for the last couple of years, and it's really fun because she'll bring in vendors that she doesn't have in her shop necessarily. Like there's a gentleman that has been there that does barbed wire art, and he makes some really beautiful things. And then there's people that sew and some people that repurpose various items and turn them into something new out of something old. And instead of throwing it away, they find a way to repurpose it. And it just is fascinating, some of the things that I see that they've done. And she always has, a couple of different people there. So I don't know who's going to be there yet, but it's fun. You can come down, take a look, and then hit some of our other antique shops while you're here. You won't be disappointed.
And people are going to places that have antique shops. It's an active, decision maker.
Well,
of whether you're going to go somewhere.
It's a form of tourism. Yeah,
absolutely.
It is. And when you look at how things were made way back when, there was character and quality.
And those attentions to detail.
And attention to detail.
Like you were saying about,
and
cleaning the
so
trash cans. And
it's like you can get really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For not a lot of money.
You know what it is to me about antiques? It's the lamps. I have a thing about antique lamps because light was such a big deal over the years, and electricity starting, and
you're talking about lava lamps?
No,
they're almost antiques, aren't they?
I know. I looked at one the other day that wasn't turned on, and I was like, no, that looked really weird.
Yeah.
I don't want to say what I thought of it, but anyway, but there's these lamps that that went from they look like kerosene lamps, and you and I lived in South Africa at a place where we really lived that way.
We actually had a lantern.
We lived on an orange farm.
With a lantern.
Maybe it's part of Exeter's charm to us is living on an orange farm. We lived on an orange farm in South Africa with lanterns, and where we lived, there wasn't regular electricity. You had generators and everything like that in your life.
And we had to haul our own water.
It was the coolest lifestyle ever. And it was oranges and sugarcane, and it was the best, and strawberries. It was the coolest lifestyle and most real lifestyle.
And cabbage.
Yeah. And I think Exeter has that kind of look of that area that just it takes me home every time I go through there. I'm like, okay, I'm at home. There's orange trees, and I know there's something about orange trees. It's once you get into them,
Well, they're very pretty. I mean, they're green all year round,
beautiful.
so they're really pretty to look at.
Do you do lemons out there too?
Yes.
Okay, citrus. They do everything.
Citrus, we have lemon, grapefruit, mandarins, several different types of oranges, grapefruit, pomelos.
Oh man, those are specialty little items. Those are big.
Yeah.
They're
limes.
huge.
Yeah, we have limes and
just
about any kind of citrus is here. Oranges are our largest crop, of course, but the rest of them are here.
And still doing a lot of grapes, right?
Yeah, grapes, lots of walnuts, some almonds, pistachios.
Those are pretty.
And then you have your peaches, plums, nectarines, and not too many kiwi, but some kiwi. And just a variety of things. I mean, just about any kind of tree fruit you could probably find here. Cherries. We're not huge on cherries, but there are some cherries here.
Man, you want to get to the farmer's stand when that happens. Get them.
Yes.
There's something about fresh cherries, like get them now. That's magic. That's magic. Okay, now that I'm hungry, thank you very much, Sandy. Let's talk about the food. Okay, so now there's these culinary events happening, and so the Optimist Club of Exeter has a new culinary challenge and foodies night out, and it's called Totally Forked. I didn't say it.
I think it's fun.
But this is happening April 7th. So tell us about that. I mean, this is like a chef thing, right?
Yes, they invite the local restaurants and chefs to come and create a dish. It used to be chocolate romance, and they had to make a dish with chocolate in it, whether it be a main dish or a dessert. It had to have some form of chocolate in that food item, and then you get to vote for your favorite. You go around and you taste. So this is going to be a little different. I think they're taking the chocolate element out of it this time. They wanted to give it a new flair, give it a little bit of a facelift, so to speak. So I think it'll be fun. So I don't know if they're going to have guidelines for them, but they might be able to make whatever they want now, without the chocolate element. But it's wonderful. You can go around and taste some of the most wonderful food. And they have wine, and then I guess they're going to be adding craft beer to it this year, which is really great because we have a new
like a brewery. You have the
Rocky
Hill
brewery, tap house. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay,
yeah,
so they
tap house.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't actually brew the beer, but they will serve a lot of the local craft beers there. And some from Visalia, and then one of our newest breweries is Rocky Hill Brewery.
Oh, okay.
And they have some great things, and they're helping with the Food Link event. But, yeah, this is a great event. It's only 3 hours, so you can go around, taste what you want, and indulge. And they usually have a silent auction there, but it's to help the Optimist Club with their scholarships that they give to the students at the continuation schools, because sometimes those students are overlooked for scholarships.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love this.
That's so cool.
I mean, I love that you come up with these creative events to help a really good cause, a really good, especially for youth. I think the more we can give youth education and life skills, education, the better,
Yeah.
And I love to hear that.
It makes these students feel, as though they're worthy of a scholarship as well. I just think I think it's a really great group of people that put this on.
It's the same like with what you do in the fall festival, because I know you're already thinking about that, right? I know it's happening. Spring's happening. She's already looking at the fall festival, but
of course.
Part of the fall festival not being just a day. You have like a week of all these different events. But your pageant, and every time you talk to me about it, like, Lisa, this is not the typical beauty pageant. This is not girls in bikinis thing. This is about taking these ladies and working with them on their presence, like how, their poise, and also their education and where they're going. This in life.
Right.
This is a big deal.
Yes, it's a personal development and scholarship program. It's definitely not what we would call a beauty pageant, and we welcome all young ladies to participate. But we take them through, for a lack of a better word, of like a little mini finishing school. We teach them the importance of writing thank you cards, and we teach them how to present themselves in the best light, how to shake someone's hand properly. How to look them in the eye, and how to dress for certain events, and how they should take their audience into account when they are going to an event. Who's going to be there? What should you wear? Don't necessarily wear what your girlfriends would want to see you in. Wear something that your parents or your grandparents might want to see you. So you need to dress for your audience, and that's kind of one of the lessons that we take them through. And we teach them about community and community service. And give them skills for interviewing and writing reports and writing essays, because they'll have to do that for scholarships and or college acceptance. They'll have to go through all these things, and they'll either have to interview for jobs or for scholarships and or colleges. When they have to go and meet with the college, sometimes they have personal interviews. So we give them a little confidence in those areas.
Yeah,
I think all the girls have the skills. They just need the confidence that they can present themselves in the most positive light.
I love that.
When you get nervous, if you can fall back on your education, you're there. But if you get nervous and you haven't been taught how to do all these things, now you're really nervous.
Right.
So boosting the confidence is really important with actually everybody, adults as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
I I love this. And when I think about Exeter too, it's that quality of life, And you here you go talking about helping kids think about their education, their future, and getting jobs and how to communicate. And all the way it starts from when they're really young, back at the Rocky Hill School, planting beans and fruit trees, and understanding some of their own surroundings. So I love that. Lastly, though. Okay, we talked about Totally Forked, but now we're going to go and do a Root Stomp Garden Party, and that's happening this month, March 24th, and it's sponsored by the Rocky Hill Brewing Company. Now, we like that. So this is a whole other event, too, and
yes.
it's for the Food Link of Tulare County. So tell us about Food Link.
Well, Food Link for Tulare County is our county food bank. It helps provide food for the local food banks, like Exeter has the Exeter Food Closet. Some of the food that they get to distribute comes from Food Link. And they just recently, a couple years ago, moved into a large, they converted an old packing house into their warehouse. And so now they're located in Exeter. And so they put in a big garden out behind them to help provide fresh fruits and vegetables, and they will give those away at different times, once a week during the season. And this is a brand new event, and it's to help support that garden, and also will help support Food Link in their efforts to feed people. It's a really great organization, and it sounds like a really fun time. I can't wait to go and experience it for the first time. I think it'll be great because it's a wonderful organization to support.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Man, you guys rock over there. Can I just tell you that? Like you do.
Cool.
Can you tell we feel homesick? It's been a long
know you
time.
need to come out and visit. I was reading the flyer, barbecue. I'm like, you have to come and barbecue. But yes, you'll have to do that too.
I know. We'll do it. We'll do all of it. Like, we'll do anything that's going on in town there because you have so much fun going on all the time. And I know, Nancy and I just feel like we need to come do like champagne in your office, your historic office with the big safe and Walter.
Yes.
There's no money in the safe, everybody. Again, I have to say it on the show again. But it's always such a pleasure having you on the show, Sandy, and hearing what's going on in Exeter. Everybody, again, exeterchamber.com. Go check it out. Definitely a destination to visit. If you're anywhere in Central California, it's east of Fresno. It's on the way into Sequoia National Park. It's just a beautiful place. Take a day drive or spend the weekend or go midweek. That's also good, too. Lodging-wise, you have a couple hotels that are downtown-ish, and you have a bed and breakfast, too, in the area, too, for people to stay in. So there's a little bit of everything out there. So check it out. Sandy, before we go, of course, we have to play you some music, right?
Okay.
Okay, so now we always like to play Everett Coast because Josh Misko, it was his birthday the other day, so we're going to say happy birthday again. He's based out of Springville. That's just around the corner from you. So we want to play music close to home for you. But this one has to do with roses. This is a song that you're going to recognize. It's called "Sally Go Round the Roses," and you have a lot of roses in your neighborhood. But I just want to change it to "Sandy Go Round the Roses." I don't know if you want to go around the roses, but Sandy Go Round the Roses. That's the song for today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and Nancy.
You behave yourself. Well, tell Walter to, not you. You don't behave.
Yes. Walter needs to behave.
Here it is. All right, everyone, again, exeterchamber.com. We also cover Exeter and Tulare County if you go to nationalparktraveling.com. And we like to put puzzles up of their murals, so I'm hoping to get that new mural photo. I want that so we can make a puzzle. And talking about flowers, there's so many flower-filled murals downtown. If it's orange blossoms, there's poppies and lupin. And so there's always good stuff to go look at for spring. But here it is. Sally Go Round the Roses. We're just calling it Sandy for today. Sandy Go Round the Roses. Again, from Everett Coast. It's off of their album, The Shell Tell Me Sessions. You can go to everettcoast.com. Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you.
cry. Let your hair hang down. Sit and cry when the door is closed. Sit and cry so no one knows. Sally, go round, round and around. Sally, go round, round and around. Saddest thing in the whole wide world is just another guy with your girl. Sally, go round the roses. 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 Hope this place can't hurt you. Hope this Sally hurt you. Roses, they can't hurt you. Roses, Sally hurt you. Sally, go round the roses. 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 Hope this place can't hurt you.
Everyone, again, that was Everett Coast, Josh Amisko, and Danny Byrne, based out of Los Angeles. You can go to their website, everettcoast.com, and that was Sally Go Round the Roses, old school song.
I love it.
It's on the Shell Tell Me sessions, and you can get that EP again. Go to everettcoast.com. We got to get him back on a show. I don't know what's going on there, traveling around. All kinds of good stuff is happening.
Cool.
Always good stuff. I tell you what, though, Exeter just, I want to go back now. Like, I always want to go back. I just hear Exeter and think about.
It's like Mayberry.
Yeah, but I mean the community spirit. I mean, just thinking about how the trash cans are cleaned. I mean, right down to those details make you think about community pride, and makes, I think, for kids. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit with David Mizejewski about kids getting out in the garden. And I think when a community says, hey, we're going to care about their urban space, their downtown, that they're going to have flowers, that they're going to have green spaces for kids to play, that we're already setting up the kids for a successful future.
Well, your environment is part of your education.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is what you get familiar with and what you think is normal. And sometimes when you change your environment, it's like, whoa, look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it has everything to do with how you're brought up and what you should be doing to educate yourself at some levels, and what other people should be doing to help you as a child, for sure, get along.
Yeah. I think
and be educated and be in a positive space.
I agree. It's so interesting for kids. I mean, to me,
Gardens
kids
are wonderful, man.
Didn't you do things like when you were a kid? Like, didn't you garden and
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if anything upset me, there were two things I ran to. One was my dog, and the other was planting and being in the garden.
Yeah, that
they were safe spaces.
Mhm. And planting, you're part of that co-creation of life.
Mhm.
And there's like, wow, something happened. It's humbling.
I'm still amazed at how a plant grows.
Me too. When you watch
and
it,
the
like
flowers,
go from the seed.
and then you look at the sequoia trees. Like, really?
I know, they're in that area, and you go like, here you are.
Amazing.
And yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my gosh, you're in this area. Here you're this amazing breadbasket of America, and you have sequoia trees in your backyard. You have some of the biggest and the best.
Well, the fact that you can plant a seed, water it, and it grows.
Yeah.
I find it amazing.
You gave me a corner piece of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, well, you always give me that, and I learned how to grow food and whatever, but I remember there was a certain age where suddenly it dawned on me, like, this is my part.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, and then it involved pocket money because I was older now.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, you have this much, and now you're going to spend this much on seeds, and having to learn how to budget my garden and budget it by sun and light and versus shade. And all of a sudden, everything changed. Like, I am responsible for this piece. This is mine, and I'm going out every hour to make sure everybody's okay.
It's a life lesson. The garden is a great example. I want to do this. How do I make it work? Well, this doesn't really grow in the shade, so you got to put it in the sun. So it's a life lesson. When things don't work, doesn't mean you quit. It means you just change how you're doing it.
Or you make a fairy house.
I love that.
I want to make fairy houses now.
Okay,
I know. I've been hanging out on the National Wildlife Federation's website for gardening, and once you get into that, and then all of a sudden you get in the kids zone, oh my gosh! Now you want to be a kid again, and then you go, well, you could. Who says you can't have a fairy garden? I want a fairy garden. So everybody stay tuned. David Mizejewski is joining us next, and we're going to talk about getting kids in the garden. And I just want to say, yeah, I want to go there too. David Mizejewski is back on Big Blend Radio's Garden Gossip Show today, not only to talk about gardening to attract birds, butterflies, and wildlife into your garden, but to share tips on getting kids out into the garden, too, and enjoying nature. David is the author of the award-winning how-to book. It's called Attracting Birds, Butterflies, and Other Backyard Wildlife. He is also a naturalist with the National Wildlife Federation and an expert spokesperson for their amazing program, the National Wildlife Federation's Garden for Wildlife program. Since 1973, this has been going on, and they have been educating and empowering people to turn their garden spaces into thriving habitats for birds, butterflies, and other wildlife. And one of the things we've learned with David over the last few months and years, actually, is that once you change your principles of growing this way and doing more native plants, all of a sudden your gardens will thrive. And he taught me the last time on the show, is like, what we're doing in our gardens, we can just step by step start replacing some plants or adding plants. You don't have to tear everything out. Just simple things that we do not become a dead zone of a community. And I think this is so exciting, and I think it's exciting to get kids out there. I encourage you to go to the website. It's nwf.org/garden. Hey, David, welcome back. How are you?
Hi there. I'm doing really well.
Hey, excited to have you on the show because, listen, you're talking about getting kids in the garden, and I have been on the website, nwf.org, everyone. There's a whole section for getting kids out into the garden for wildlife. And I want to be a kid. I want to make fairy houses. There's all these projects. There's projects on learning about daddy long legs and bullfrogs. I mean, there's all these cool things that can I be a kid? Am I allowed?
Everybody can be a kid.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I mean, that's one of the fun things about getting outdoors, and whether you're gardening or not. I think being outside gives us permission to kind of reconnect with our own, our own youth and our own, our inner child, right? I mean, most of us hopefully had the opportunity to play outside at least some of the time as kids, and I love that. I'm going to be thinking about that the next time I go out in my yard and putting my hands in my little pond to pull stuff out and look for snails and whatever, to kind of take a second and enjoy it the same way that I did as a kid.
Yeah, it's huge. To me, growing up, I was always out in the garden, and now, I'll do anything to be outside and not inside next to a computer. I start to realize I get crabby, and I'm not the nicest person when I'm not out there with that. And
I'm
looking
not
at
saying
bugs.
anything.
No, I know. Well, let me just talk about you. Anyway, no. But there's something that I think this is invaluable. We were just talking with our guest prior to you, and she was talking about our community gardens and getting school gardens going, and that was one of the things I also learned on the website today with nwf.org/garden, school gardens. And this is another thing. There's personal gardens, but then school gardens also being a big deal. And going through that, I realized how much this is important for kids' development, educationally. This isn't just about, oh, cool, I want to make a fairy garden. This is I really do. I did have one. But this is about, they're actually learning math and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought all of that up. I mean, two of the big pillars of the National Wildlife Federation over our 80-plus year history are things that you might not necessarily think go hand in hand with a wildlife conservation organization. Yes, we do work on on endangered species and protecting habitats and all the stuff that you would expect of a wildlife group. But we, as you mentioned, since 1973 have been really active in this space of wildlife habitat gardening, planting stuff in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our cities, in our towns that kind of make them a little bit more habitable to other species and kind of invite those wildlife that otherwise get banished out of our cities into the ever-shrinking wilderness, back in so they can share the space with us. And so this whole idea of urban ecology is something that the National Wildlife Federation has been doing for decades. In fact, we're celebrating the 45th anniversary of the program this year. The other thing is this idea of connecting kids to nature. And it's one of the things that we do at the National Wildlife Federation that most of our fellow conservation organizations don't really focus on. There's a lot of, kid-focused groups out there, and there are local groups that kind of get involved here. But at the national level, we're one of the only ones that really focus on this. And, it goes all the way back to, 51 years ago with the beginning of the publishing of Ranger Rick magazine, which is going strong.
Mm-hmm. I love
and
that
so
magazine.
it's part of our sort of our core organizational identity. This idea of we not only need to protect wildlife now, but we need to make sure that we're connecting the next generation to the natural world and exposing them to how awesome wildlife are, so that when they grow up into adults, they actually know a little bit about it and they care about it. And that's actually backed up by research, by the way. There's research that shows that kids that have the opportunity to go outside and see and have personal experiences in nature, especially if they have an adult mentor that helps them do that, they generally grow up into adults that have higher science literacy and they on a values level they care about protecting wildlife and nature. And so both of those things are really essential to just the identity of who the National Wildlife Federation is. And so whether it's, we're still publishing Ranger Rick magazine, we actually got 3 different editions for different age groups. So from the little toddlers all the way up to, preteens can be reading various Ranger Rick titles. We've got the companion website, which you've mentioned, with all sorts of, fun stuff on there, comics and games and activities and that kind of thing. You mentioned our Schoolyard Habitats program, and that is really, really a neat program. It started back in the 90s, and it's now part of our bigger Eco Schools USA program, which is all about greening schools from top to bottom. It's actually an international program that the National Wildlife Federation implements here in the USA. But the Schoolyard Habitats piece grew out of our wildlife gardening program. And the idea, as you were mentioning, is not just that you're going to create a wildlife habitat garden that's going to attract the birds and the butterflies and provide habitat, but that it's actually going to be used as an outdoor classroom. And I'm so glad you mentioned math, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, like we could teach science class out there. You can teach anything outside in a wildlife garden. And different kids have different learning styles. And not every kid, is going to benefit from being cooped up in a classroom all day. And so when schools are able to incorporate some outdoor learning, it actually can really benefit. There's a whole host of benefits. I could go on and on and on.
Well, I think this is so cool because just as I look at my upbringing, and luckily, I did no different than being urban. I was out in the bush for many years in Africa and Kenya as a kid, and then did go into the urban setting and had to change my perspective. And Ranger Rick was with me throughout, even while we were in Kenya. We were getting them, and I had these huge. Do you remember? Okay, like David, I don't think we're that far apart in age. Do you remember the big binders of projects we would get? There's a magazine.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I know now we are all digital, right? But I remember those big binders, and I was like, where's my next Ranger Rick? Who cares about the next toy? I want that. There was these projects, but you'd go out, and it was so interesting.
So cool.
Later in life, going into high school and having to do biology class, all of that came back to me, and it was like this became things that I understood, and I understood biology. When the teacher was talking about things, I understood what a spore was. I understood how pine cones worked compared to over here what a bulb was. Or I understood things. I was like ahead of my class from that magazine and those projects. And because then I became a geek into it. Like it was like, this is it. Every bug, every snake, every lizard, like, dude,
that's how it works,
cool. Look
you know.
Can I just say, as a parent, it made my job so much easier.
I know, but it's so exciting, and there's projects, and it's like the Junior Ranger program in national parks. I know adults that are now going around and they're retired, and they're doing all the Junior Ranger programs. So do you see, like, adults getting involved in this, like, on their own, like, excitement side because it's cool and fun?
Oh yeah, I mean the idea that the National Wildlife Federation and all these great programs and resources and Ranger Rick Magazine are there to help parents is by design. We know that a lot of people don't feel like they're nature experts, or they might not even be comfortable going outside, let alone taking their kids out and letting them run kind of and explore, or even going camping or something like that. And so we try to make it as easy as possible and be that like trusted resource that with, again, decades of experience. I mean, I have to say my colleagues who work on Ranger Rick Magazine and in our educator programs and our school programs are just like some of the top-notch people in those fields. I mean, Ranger Rick Magazine wins awards every year, and I can brag about that because I'm not personally involved in making those magazines, but I'm really proud of that on behalf of the National Wildlife Federation. So I mean, we've got experts that know how to talk to kids in a fun, entertaining, but also educational way about all sorts of things that are sciencey or even environmental issues in ways that are age appropriate and ways that help them understand some of maybe, again, the complex science and so on and so forth. So I mean, I'm really glad that you picked up on that fact that we're a resource for parents too, or anybody that has a kid in their life.
Because especially if you're living in a city and maybe you weren't raised as a parent, you could be a new parent and you weren't raised that way. And maybe you have no clue. You lived in, downtown Brooklyn, which I don't know downtown Brooklyn, but I know you do better than me. You're on that side of the hood of the state, or the country, I should say. But there's a lot of people that were not raised understanding nature. In fact, there's a birder that we know who was on our shows for many years, and he's now retired. And he was raised out in Southern California. And they lived out in the boonies, and they lived in tents as kids. And they, as bird watchers, they learned the birds. Him and his brother lived in a tent. I mean, this is. I don't know if this was all legal, but this is how they lived. And they made up their own bird names. Yeah. According to the bird voice, how they acted. And this was back in the 30s that they were doing this. And they learned animals this way. And then all of a sudden they ended up going from Southern California on the border, living in the border, like Campo area of San Diego, living up in downtown L.A. kind of deal, East L.A., not downtown, East L.A. And suddenly that was gone, but then they saw, wait, some of the birds were still there. And they didn't know that Sibley's was around or Ranger Rick at this point because they had been kind of shut out that way because of what their parents were doing, living-wise. And his dad was working on the water systems and piping out in that area. So it wasn't a negative thing. But this is what they did. They created their own bird names. But they watched, and as kids, this was their whole thing. And so I think this is so important that parents do have these resources because sometimes parents didn't get chance to bird watch or have a garden. They didn't get that opportunity. And now with community gardens and school gardens and church gardens and, come on, apartment complexes get with that too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can change this mold, and through the kids, the parents will learn.
100%. And if anybody out there listening has kids, you know that that's how it works, right? Your kids get obsessed with something, and the next thing you know, you're an expert at it. But no, that's such a great story because you're absolutely right. A lot of people maybe didn't grow up with that kind of exposure to nature, but that's the beauty of a wildlife garden. Because if you plant some native plants and that are going to attract butterflies, and if you leave some shrubs up where the birds can nest, and maybe you put out a bird bath, minimize the size of your lawn a little bit, give over a little bit of that space to some natural plants, the next thing you know, you're going to have this really cool wildlife oasis that is beautiful. You're going to feel good about it because you're helping out the local wildlife. But what better place and what safer place to let your kids go explore nature than literally right outside your own door, Exactly. Like you don't have to be a naturalist like me, and you don't have to be a wilderness guide to give your kids these kinds of outdoor experiences where they're getting to observe really neat animals. And, we're not talking, lions and tigers and bears. We're talking, tiger beetles and ant lions and, some other smaller critter that's named after a bear. Birds and butterflies and insects and frogs, the kinds of animals that can live in your yard. And, again, you don't have to go off into the wilderness to do that. You don't have to be an expert. But if you let your kids go outside, which is sadly something that is happening less and less and less nowadays for a host of reasons, but this idea of creating a wildlife garden can be a really great solution to, again, parents' feelings like they can't do this on their own, but also helping parents get over some of those fears that we have today that, we're afraid to let our kids, play in the neighborhood for whatever reason. But, again, if you do this in your own yard, not only will it be interesting for the kids, there'll be tons for them to kind of explore and do and learn. And if you need help, again, if you go to our website, we've got tons of outdoor activities and stuff like that, crafts that you can engage the kids with, but while still letting them kind of play and explore on their own. It's the perfect solution.
I find it interesting because there's a being taught syndrome, and then there's a go outside, have some fun, and explore, and come back with questions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where parents get a little jittery because they can't always answer the questions. 9 times out of 10 they can't answer it. But now we can go Google and try to find an answer.
They have everything on the website, yeah.
But when I was bringing Lisa up and she was going outside and exploring, and she would come back in with, hey, what's this, what's that? And then she brings it in with her. I'm like, uh-oh. No, it's okay. There's the education I had to have to, say what it was. But I learned early on to say, I don't know, let's go find out, instead of trying to pretend I knew.
It became a family project.
And it was so cool because then
you guys are so intuitive with all of this, and you're hitting everything that I wanted to make sure I got to tonight talking to you guys. And that is what you're touching on is the value of unscheduled outdoor playtime. And play has this sort of negative connotation sometimes, like it's frivolous, and but play is how animals in the natural world learn, and how they how they get the skills that they need, and they hone the skills they need to survive. It's the same thing with humans. When we go outside and we play, and explore, it helps us learn about the natural world around us, which gives us really valuable information. And the fact is that kids today, one of the problems is that they're actually overscheduled. They get up in the morning, they go to school, they go to their after-school activities, they do their after-school sports or whatever, then they come home and they play on their iPad for an hour, and then they go to bed. And then on the weekends, they're being shuttled from soccer game to this birthday party. It's all structured activities. And what is lacking a little bit is what used to happen, in the olden days, where kids just had to go out and invent their own games and turn over rocks and look for frogs and things like that. And so that kind of unscheduled, unstructured playtime is what not only is missing, but it's particularly valuable because it engages kids mentally and physically, and kind of piques their curiosity about the world in a way that a very structured activity doesn't. Now, again, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with any of those other things that I just listed. We do need classroom time, and we do need organized sports, and after-school activities are a godsend, I'm sure, for many parents. But we need to get a little bit more of that outdoor playtime, unstructured playtime, back into our kids' lives, because it's really important. And again, I could go on and do a whole show on some of the stats on the benefits of this outdoor play. Kids that get to go outside and do unstructured play, they tend to be more physically fit. If they have attention deficit issues, they oftentimes cope better in the classroom if they get that chance to get outside. They're less likely to be nearsighted. They're less likely to have vitamin D deficiency. There's just a whole list of things like that. So it's better for your kids.
David.
No, but there is something I want to call it the natural question, where okay, if you're in a classroom, the teacher says this, and then you may have a question, but it comes from because the teacher did this. When you're outside and you see something, as a adult or a child, you have what I would call for want of a better phrase, the natural question, because it wasn't prompted by somebody telling you
magic.
something.
That's what makes it
prompted
magic.
By seeing something.
Discovery.
And it's called natural curiosity for
cool.
me.
Yep.
And then you come in and you want to know about it. Okay, now we have the internet and tools to look it up, which is great. Awesome. But the fact of the matter is you're more interested in a natural question for yourself if you want to know something than when it comes in another fashion.
This is from you.
So
now you become a human being.
Yeah. Lisa would go out in the garden, and we have weird gardens because we lived in Africa, but there's weird gardens here too, and she'd be like, this is not the same ant that was on that plant over there. This one's really big. And then why is this ant here doing the same thing as that ant or not? And we built her like a little hut thingy out of plywood.
A restaurant.
A restaurant.
A fake restaurant.
She said she wanted to be a waitress when she grew up. I'm like, okay, let me show you what that's like. And so we built her a little hut thingy, and the termites ate it. And every day she'd come in and say, the restaurant's sinking. I'm like, that's right, those are termites.
I was a good waitress later.
And she'd go to the termites and say, what's your order? It was really fun, to watch this whole thing of her watching, and she now gets how the world works.
That's the thing. It's a natural discovery. I think Nancy's right. And this thing
she
about
discovered herself.
Kids are able to go, I have a question, and it's beyond the curriculum. And this means that kids are thinking for themselves and starting to ask for themselves versus what's fed to them.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. I mean, when kids get to go out and explore on their own, their brains work, they have to. And even if they're not just like exploring nature, I mean, I'm even talking about just going out and, inventing games with their friends, and having the freedom to do that. And again, I know sometimes that's a luxury, not everybody has the same ability to do that with their kids, depending on where you live and what your resources are and that kind of thing. But, there's if you try, if you understand the importance of it, there's usually a way, whether, it's at a local park or, again, it could even be part of a club, I mean, there are Boy Scouts and Girl Scout groups and other groups like that even in the middle of cities or out in rural areas, where you might not have as many resources or whatever, or other kids to play with, that those structured things could be a vehicle for the unstructured play too. So, but yeah, that's how it works. And that's, again, one of the big things that the National Wildlife Federation is trying to get the word out about. And again, for us, it goes back to, we know that when kids go outside and play and explore, they learn about nature. And what's that saying? You only protect what you love, and you only love what you know. And if we're not ever giving kids today a chance to get to know nature and the wildlife that inhabits it, then what's going to happen when they grow up? Are they not going to know it, and then therefore they're not going to love it, and then therefore they're not going to protect it? So that's why we have such a heavy stake in this. We want to raise the next generation of conservationists.
And I think it's so important, number one, too, that because of the whole idea of the certified wildlife habitats and gardening for wildlife means that you're gardening for your kids too. And so I want to get into what we can do and how we can get kids in the garden, some projects, and what parents can do. And then we have to do a whole show on a segment just on the schools, because I think this is so crucial. But before we get there, I would say the first step from everything I've learned from you and going on the website, and I just wish we were all sitting outside with wine in the garden right now with the hummingbirds flying. Their hummingbirds are right here looking at us. But the thing, number one, is if you are growing a garden for wildlife and birds and butterflies and bees, you're growing a green, clean garden that kids can be in without risk of being sick from chemicals. I have two things on this. One is around the corner from us, there's a school, and they have this tiny corner.
I love it.
This is the weirdest thing. This tiny corner of a native garden that they've actively built. And we watched them do it years ago. And they have built this little tiny corner of a native garden, and they have signs up, and I think we've mentioned this on the show with you before. But it dawned on me the other morning, we took a sunrise walk through there, and I've noticed, like I said, I want to go there because the vermilion flycatchers, the flycatchers are here in Arizona now. This is a season when they're here. I want to go see if the flycatchers are there. What I noticed is that the hawk is always, the Cooper's hawks hang out there, and the big ones do, that all of the bird life is congregating around this tiny corner of this school.
Yeah.
And the starlings were there, the flickers and the Gila woodpecker. I mean, they were all there, and I was like, this is crazy. As soon as you have this little vegetation spot that is natural, they're there, and kids are able to be there, and you know, they're learning to be careful of snakes and things like that, because we do have them here. We have rattlesnakes, but they're being taught that. And yet at the same time, there's this symbiosis happening. It's so exciting. So to me, that just proves, one, they have this interest. The kids are there. They hang out after school. So that's just one thing that wildlife will come, your kids will learn, but they're not putting chemicals there. And that's the thing that I love about this whole part of it, is your kids are going to be in a safe habitat where a Facebook group of birders, the one lady went in, she went to a big box store and showed a photo of flowers, and it has something Nicotania or something on there. Nicotania
is the flower.
Nicotiana.
It says something about the EPA lets this happen and it's fine, or the FDA, I can't keep up with it, but she was like, this will hurt your hummingbirds. This will hurt your flower, your plant, your bird life and everything. Don't buy this. And I was thinking about the butterfly bush thing we talked about. So I was wondering too. So there's chemicals, but now don't we have to, you know, if we look at wildlife, birds, butterflies, bees, all the pollinators, our kids and our pets, we have to look at the plants, and that they don't need that kind of stuff. So the plants are coming with chemicals.
Yeah. I mean, there is. I know what you're saying. You were trying to say neonicotinoids.
Oh, I can't pronounce that.
Because there's a plant.
I don't do that.
Neonicotinoids are.
Yeah, there's Nicotiana. That's a beautiful plant. It is a tobacco plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neonicotinoids are a group of pesticides that are systemic. So the seeds are treated with them and plants are treated with them, and they basically are absorbed in all parts of the of the plant's parts. And so if something like, for example, a bee comes and drinks the nectar, well, they are likely then going to be poisoned by that plant. And unfortunately, these groups of pesticides have come about because, believe it or not, they are a lot less toxic than some other things and persist less and things like that. And so they really grew in popularity. However, nature's all connected, right? And there's no undoing that. You know, when you pull one thread out of the food web, it affects everything else. And so even though they are better than some other chemicals that we used to use, they still are having an impact. And we're learning, there's still a lot of science that needs to be done, but, all the indicators are that, they are definitely having impacts on pollinators and bigger ecosystems. And so, the National Wildlife Federation actually just passed a resolution at our last annual meeting that we're pushing for the EPA to suspend use of and approval of all of these kinds of chemicals until we can get further research into the actual impacts that they're having on bees and other pollinators and things like that. So So what you want to do to avoid them is look at the plant label. You may or may not see something, earmarking the plant saying this was a plant treated with neonicotinoids. Ask at your local nursery. Use your voice as a consumer to be an advocate for natural gardening, because if you don't tell the garden center where you shop that you want plants that don't have neonicotinoids, they're not going to know. And if you do it and I do it and all your neighbors do it, well, then they're going to know there's a market for plants that are not treated with this stuff. And a lot of nurseries nowadays are actually making a statement and saying they're not going to carry plants that have these. So that's something definitely to look out for. But going back to your bigger point there about this little corner that, just has a little bit more vegetation than maybe the surrounding lawns and concrete, and what a magnet it is for wildlife. You guys, it's like, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you plant it, they will come. It's true. It works.
It does work.
Yeah, that's what this is all about.
So the first step,
but then I want to just say for a child growing up, they're being taught, but they're not being taught. They're assimilating knowledge through their own viewpoint. In other words, they're watching it and they're connecting the dots as opposed to being told it's this, this, this. And when they reach the level where they're being told, they're like, oh, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Actually, I've seen it.
So,
and I think that's what's missing a lot of times, especially if you're going to talk politics and representatives, that maybe they never had the opportunity to actually assimilate their own knowledge and know what's true and what isn't.
Don't start me. I know, but this is the thing. I think it is absolutely true. So now kids, let's just reel it back in here. Kids getting into a garden that is native. Okay, so the school I'm talking about, this tiny, I'm going to send you a photo. It is this small corner.
Cute.
It's like this is your corner, but most of the land and everything around other than the field is, we're pretty natural out here in Tucson, but and people have learned that. People's fences are prickly pears, because people won't come through there, but, I was going to say guinea fowl.
Bunnies do.
What do you call them? Quail
do.
But so it's interesting, but this was, I was thinking about this the other morning with you coming on the show, and I was like, these kids are learning their local plants. They're learning.
Exactly.
I see them with their little, sitting outside. The teacher comes out and talks about it. And I was like, this is so cool. These kids are going to learn the difference. And so, therefore, they're going to learn, don't plant those big box nicotinias, whatever. No, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Whatever you said. Thank you. The neonicotinoids. Whenever it's that big, you already have to start worrying.
Race.
Yeah. So if there's you've got to. Well, we need to do. I want to cover something on that because people need to know, and that's the thing. So if kids know that these are native plants, and they will feel safe, right? So we need to create that as a sanctuary for them first, as a parent or a school.
Yeah.
And that's the first step.
Yeah, and again, you guys get it. That's what this is all about. Create natural garden spaces that support wildlife, that don't rely on a lot of chemicals, which, by the way, as you mentioned, are not particularly good for us or our pets either. I always cringe every time I see, the people who have the chemical-treated lawns with the sign where there's a big X over the kid and the dog. How crazy is that we're poisoning the very land that we live on? But,
and
that does exist. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to plant some native plants. Take your kid to the nursery, the native plant nursery, right? Are they part of it? What are the first steps to creating a little sanctuary for your kids to get involved? What are the first steps we can do?
So I think one of the easiest things to do to get your kid engaged as far as creating a garden, and specifically a wildlife garden, is to plant sunflowers. Oh. Sunflowers are super easy to germinate. You can get the little planting pots that will basically break down in the ground, so you can start your seed right in there, and you don't have to pull it out. You can plant that right in the ground. You can even use little paper Dixie cup type things as well. And you just get a little bit of potting soil, go to your local garden center. In fact, a lot of grocery stores, hardware stores and home improvement stores all have seeds out around this time of year. They're going to be putting them out pretty soon here as spring comes upon us. You can get sunflower seeds anywhere. And sunflower seeds are great wildlife plants. They have nectar and pollen for bees and butterflies and other pollinators, even the heavily cultivated varieties. There are native sunflowers out there. Most of the seed packets you're going to get are cultivated varieties, but that's fine. They're not considered an invasive non-native plant anywhere. So they have great nectar for bees and butterflies. And then once those bees and butterflies come and pollinate those flowers, they basically fertilize them, and they are able to produce the delicious sunflower seeds. And, of course, birds love the sunflower seeds. So you really get multiple seasons of habitat value out of that sunflower plant. But, again, it will germinate super quickly. Kids have short attention spans, so you need a little bit of instant gratification here. And within a few weeks, the plant will be ready to plant outside, and a few weeks after that, it'll start blooming. And then the kids can really see the direct connection between getting their little fingers in the dirt and planting that seed and have ownership over it. And then they get to go out and pick where they're going to plant it in the yard. And, obviously parents have to help with this, making sure that it stays watered and, engage the kids in it. Let them name it, and it becomes a whole season-long activity. And it's so easy to do, and, kids love it. So that, I think, is like a super simple step that you can do to begin to get your kids engaged in the garden. Another one.
That.
Yeah, another
I love that
one
because
is
we have them out here. Sunflowers go wild, and I know that we even back in the day bought all these native plant seeds. Like we have them. I'm just saying here in Tucson. I was always thinking like sunflowers, are they really native? Except for the native ones that we see in the parks. And then you wonder about those too, because nowadays I'm always wondering: is this an invasive? Is this mustard or not? You get to this point of wanting to learn. But it's so cool because the bugs love them. I have so many sunflower photos with bugs that I don't know, and I'm trying to identify the bugs, and they're super cool, crazy bugs. And as a kid and as an adult, I'm like, that's so cool. And you get to watch it, and especially if they're around. I didn't know that about you. Made my life just so happy to know that sunflowers are okay. Yeah, I'm really happy to know that.
And just to say that bugs are okay too.
Bugs rock.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of it for kids.
But the natural, most often response to bugs is get the spray, kill them.
No.
And oh my gosh, they're so interesting.
Yeah,
we have some beetles out here that are just really just watch them. They're so cool.
I know. We're weird, but we're not. We're not weird. I think we're just happy people because we're in nature. That's the cool thing. Okay, so what's your second thing? Because this is cool. I didn't know that about sunflowers. I remember growing beans in school.
I was just going to say, just before I got on the call, I was revising our pollinator tip sheet, and the number one bullet under the tips is if you have bugs in your garden, it's a good thing. Bugs are a sign of a healthy environment, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing I would say is get your kid outside and let them dig in the dirt.
Yeah.
We're so afraid of kids getting dirty. I think there's actually a greater awareness nowadays that over-sanitizing kids is actually a bad thing. It can actually, lead to a weaker immune system. I always say, a spoonful of dirt is medicine. And I'm not suggesting that your kid eats dirt, but you know what I mean. Like when kids go out and get dirty, they get exposed to things, and their immune system builds up, so they don't end up with as bad of allergies or things like that. And so, let your kid go out and explore and do things like turn over rocks and tip over a fallen log, or look underneath the leaves of a plant in your garden and look for insects or insect eggs or caterpillars. There's so much life going on, especially if you have a native plant garden. Native plants support infinitely more insects and other wildlife than your ornamental exotics, which frankly were chosen by the garden industry because nothing eats them and nothing can live on them. So they're essentially the equivalent of putting out, sort of plastic plants in your yard when it comes to supporting wildlife and being part of the ecosystem. So, just something that's simple, and it could be in your own yard. It could be going for a walk around your neighborhood. A little bit more involved version of that is to create a nature scavenger hunt for your kids. So give them a list of things to go look for. A red leaf, a blue rock, a feather. Things like that they can actually actively kind of engage their mind and be thinking about and observing. And you can make it fun. You can give a prize or whatever. You could do this every weekend, and then at the end you have sort of this list, this little nature journal that your kids have created. So there's ways to do it real low key, and there's ways to do it a little bit more involved, depending on how much time and commitment you want to make to it. But again, even just getting your kid outside to get their hands in the dirt and look for worms and start to kind of learn about the animals that are actually living in your yard is a really great first step. And then you could take it to the next step and say, okay, well, we saw these earthworms. Well, what do you think they need to survive? We saw that bumblebee. What could we do to make sure that bumblebee, that she has a great home? We saw a bird. We saw a bird singing. What could we do to attract that bird to our yard so that it can lay eggs and have its own babies, right? Well, then that leads to getting your kids involved, but actually helping you put out and pick the things that you're going to put to create the habitat, which, as we've talked about in the past, is made up of 4 things: food, water, cover, and places to raise young. So, food mostly is going to be your plants. So take your kids to the garden center. Let them pick out the plants that they like that, obviously you can help them pick the good native plants, but, let them have a choice in it so that they have ownership over it. Let your kids, pick out the bird feeder that you might want to put out. Let your kids decorate the bird bath. Don't paint the inside, but you can get your craft paint out and paint the outside and make something pretty. Help your kids or have your kids help you make a totem boat. Get an old clay pot and crack it in half. And, again, you can paint that as well on the outside and decorate it and glue stuff to it and, make it look like a toad. And then put that out in your yard as a little space of cover for toads and other small animals. There's so many different ways that you can engage your kids in this idea of setting up a wildlife garden. And again, the more you engage them in the process, the more invested they're going to be and the more meaningful it will be when they actually see, when you plant a milkweed plant and then you find a monarch butterfly caterpillar on it. I mean, whoa, that is huge. Then you get to watch the life cycle. It's one thing to watch this stuff on TV or read it in a book, but when you get to see it with your own eyes, or you see, a robin family raise their babies in your backyard, I mean, it's incredible. You can't replicate that.
Thing. And by the time your child becomes a congressman, he will know how to vote, or she will know how to vote.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I just get this feeling sometimes that politically we're dealing with people who don't know anything about nature.
Yeah.
They don't understand the web of life. They don't understand toxin versus non-toxin because they never went outside as kids
and saw
or something. Where everything was delivered phony, like here's your exotic plants, and as you say, they may be pretty, but they're not delivering what you need, so they don't really get the web of life, which means we can deny climate change. We can deny things that are happening in nature because it's easier to say no than it is to say yes sometimes.
All I can tell you is that the younger generation, as soon as it gets knowledge, it acts on it, and it does really well, and especially when it hits home, and just saying, like, really the young, you got to, I don't want to hear anything negative about young people.
No, I'm tired of that.
That's enough of that stuff, because look at that. Look at them. Look at them right now. Anytime that they can take a stand, they are. They may have their phones and their whatever, video games or whatever. But the reality is they are more clued in, and they want to do things. They want things to be better for them growing up.
Absolutely.
So really, the more we can do, give them space in a garden. We all want that. At the end of the day, when it's time for us to be sent off, the last thing we want to do is be out in the garden in a wheelchair. That's what we want to do. We want to be in the garden. At the end of the day, everyone, before they pass on, they want to be outside in nature, no matter if they're in a wheelchair or on a bench. That's what they want. So that just tells you how close we are to nature. And for kids, it is our duty that they have a natural space and that we create it for them and allow them to also create and co-create with nature and understand it. I just want to tell you, speaking of painting and doing things, David, we were talking about you on the show the other day.
Oh, really?
There is a couple. Yeah, actually,
we do gossip.
We do gossip about you on the show. We did our garden gossip show a few days ago, and a couple, David and Shelley Neff, they do what's called Weird Home Tours in Austin, Texas. They have this amazing book of all these homes, and what they do is that people that go on the tours, the money goes to help people get into housing to move forward in their life. It's combating the fact that affordable housing is no longer in a lot of places. Anyway, the very first lady in the book is a certified NWF garden habitat, just saying.
Yeah. And there you go.
We talked about it on the show, and let me tell you, now her place is an Airbnb, talking about being they had this whole write-up about it, and her walls of her garden are all painted with whales and all kinds of cool, crazy stuff. And that tells me, isn't that it for kids to have that? Get out of the box, everybody. Like, let it be fun, because garden and nature, like, it allows you to be real. Sometimes things die and some things thrive. And you get to have that point. Before you go, though, I want to know what's up with this bee habitat that you have, because I know you have one. I want to know, because most people will never buy anything that has like a bee, that you're going to now like have a bee home. Like that scares people. So I wanted to ask you before. So now finally I get you.
Well, maybe the next time I come on, I can tell you about this whole new campaign that we literally just launched this week called Be Sponsible.
Okay, cool.
I don't have time to get into the gory details of it now, but everybody out there, if you just Google Be Sponsible, you can find out ways that you can get involved in helping to save bees. And I'm not talking just about honeybees, which are really a domesticated species. They're really important for agriculture, but they're really not quite wildlife. For us at the National Wildlife Federation, we're focusing on the native bee species. There's over 4,000 of them in North America, and a lot of them are declining too, including species like the rusty-patched bumblebee, which actually just got listed as an endangered species. Used to be really common in people's backyards. So here's the thing about bees. Incredibly important animals for life on this planet. They, without the pollination services of bees, life on this planet would literally come to a grinding halt. Over 85% of our flowering plants are dependent on animals to pollinate them and fertilize them, and mostly it's bees that are doing that. There are other insects and hummingbirds and things like that, but bees by far are the most important pollinators. And without the bees pollinating the wild plants, then the wild plants would never set the fruit or the seeds or the nuts that then feed all the other animals up and down the food chain. So they're really, really important. They're awesome backyard wildlife. They're wildlife that you can help on the scale of your own backyard. And it just boils down to planting a bunch of pretty flowers and not spraying toxic chemicals everywhere. If everybody did that, we could really give a boost to our bee population, and that's what Be Sponsible is really all about for the National Wildlife Federation, trying to get that word out and inspire people, again, just to plant the wildlife-friendly garden like we've been talking about for 45 years, and think about the impact that you're going to have on bees. You could also do things like put out a native bee nesting block. Most of our native bees do not form hives. Everybody thinks honeybees. Most native bees are solitary. So it's one female bee. She finds a tunnel. Most species nest actually in the ground, in little tunnels in the ground that they dig. And about 70% of our native bees do that. The other 30% nest in like old, beetle tunnels or termite tunnels in decaying wood, like a dead tree or a fallen log. So, number one, you can give them nesting places if you allow some of your yard just to be in sort of like bare, gravelly dirt instead of mulching everything or planting everything. And that might become a really great, important resource for some of our native ground nesting bees. Similarly, you can leave out a fallen log or other kind of fallen woody debris that will be natural nesting places for those kinds of bees that nest in those places. Now, you can mimic those just like you can mimic a cavity in a tree for a bird like a bluebird or a chickadee or something that nests in holes in trees by putting out a bird nesting box. You can put out a bee house that has a whole bunch of replaceable little tubes that kind of mimic what their natural tunnels that they would be laying their eggs in. And even though they're solitary, they're happy to nest in close proximity to each other. They just don't have a hive where they take care of each other and that kind of thing. And so what the female bee does is she goes out and she gathers nectar and pollen. She goes into the tunnel. She rolls that into a little ball. She lays an egg on it, and then she builds a little chamber wall. And she'll fill up the tunnel, her nesting tunnel, with a whole series of these little chambers, and then off she goes. The little baby bees hatch, the larvae feed on the bee. It's called a bee loaf, like a loaf of bread of the nectar and pollen. They feed on that, they pupate, and eventually, oftentimes the next year, they'll chew out and they'll start the cycle again. This is what can be happening right in your own yard. And one final note, yes, female bees can sting. But most bees they're just not likely to sting you, especially native bees. The solitary bees, because think of honeybees. They've got a whole hive filled with all of their babies and all of their honey. They want to protect that, right? But most of our native bees don't have that. So unless you really grab them and squeeze them, they're really not going to sting you. I've seen little kids actually holding some of various native bee species with no issue whatsoever. Not that I recommend handling any wildlife, but you get the point. So bees are important. You can help them in your yard. And again, if you folks want to go check out the Garden for Wildlife program, you guys have been great about giving the website, nwf.org/garden. And if you go to besponsible.org, or .com, you can get involved in that specific campaign tied to our Garden for Wildlife program.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much because I wanted to know what that bee box is all about. We've gone from the beak box to the bee box.
And it is true. Sometimes we went on a hike with a ranger in Pinnacles National Park, and we're like, look at that. And he goes, that's actually a bee. They have
they have 400 bee species.
Yeah, and it didn't look anything like what I would know.
Oh my God, yeah.
So
I mean, that's
cool.
the other thing. Everybody thinks bees are black and yellow. No.
Yeah.
Not all bees are black and yellow. In fact, many bees are metallic, green or black or blue or even red. Many bees are tiny, little itty-bitty things. You probably have tons of bees flying around in your yard right now and you didn't even know they were bees. I actually just wrote a blog. So if you go to blog@nwf.org, all about, it's basically 10 facts about bees. So if you want to learn more about these guys and see some really cool pictures, seek that out. You can, again, Google Be Sponsible or go to blog.nwf.org and search on bees, and you'll find it. But it's 10 facts, and this is all the stuff that I include in that blog, plus a whole bunch of other really cool info. So definitely check that out.
Okay, well, we'll have to do a bee segment, okay? And
yes,
I'll get
let's definitely do that.
From Pinnacles National Park on there
because
he's
great.
He's a bee man. He's a mothman too. He travels the country looking at them. So thank you so much. I know we kept you longer than normal, David, but it's always so exciting. We get all geeky out and I don't know. It's like a big nature fix. It's very cool. And everybody again, nwf.org/garden. Go there, get involved. It is so cool and really, you'll see birds that you didn't even know existed in your backyard. Seriously, we have cardinals in Arizona. Who thought, right?
Who would know that?
They're here now, and we can hear them all day long. It's so cool because we have native habitats all around us. So check it out, nwf.org/garden. Thanks so much, David. You take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye. I want to go garden something right now. I want to garden something. I don't want to garden something. Okay. I want to go play in the garden.
You want to dig in the dirt.
Yeah. I mean, don't you? It's so cool. It's so cool. And I just love the fact that it's about getting kids outside because the more curious they are, I mean, that's the thing, curiosity. Having those little eyes light up and go, oh, look at this. What's this about? It's so exciting. That's the way it should be. I want to thank our guests today, Sandy Blankenship and David-Mizejewski, for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to Paris, Nancy.
I got to go pack.
I know, really. We're going to charm school.
Or I could just go ooh la la.
No, this is really funny. We're going to charm school. Yes.
No way.
Big Blend Radio airs daily at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m., 2 p.m. Eastern Time. 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time when it's Friday through Saturday, Sunday. Check it out at bigblendradio.com because it'll tell you what the new segment is every day. But tomorrow, March 14th, we're going to the Parisian Charm School with best-selling author Jamie Cat Callan, and her latest book is Parisian Charm School, French Secrets for Cultivating Love, Joy, and That Certain Je ne sais quoi. And I'm so surprised I can even say that, but I can. And it's a good book. It is good. I mean, it's like it makes you slow down in life and appreciate the things in front of you and making use of the things that you have. And it's about quality of life.
Where's the charm part come in?
Champagne.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Everyone, thanks for joining us. We're going to play some music as we close, right? This one is called Jacaranda. I wanted to play this because it's just a tree that I grew up with. We were talking about childhood. And
there's bees on those trees.
Jacaranda trees, they are the most beautiful tree with these beautiful, they're like little orchid blossoms that we have out here in the desert. And their seed pods are the coolest things, like little faces, and you could make instruments with them and do all kinds of things. And I don't know, I grew up with jacaranda trees, and you have them here in Southern California area, and they're beautiful. And so here it is. It's from Everin Ozan, awesome Native American flute player. You can go to ozanmusic.com. It's off of his album Alluvia, and I just want to play this. So here it is, Jacaranda. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Here it is, a little Jacaranda.